nobody's ever cleaned any of the contacts in it. So when I service it, I really do a good job on it. Because I was planning on keeping, that's the one I'm using now. I was planning on keeping that for myself. So I did everything I did in it. I did super heavy duty. I used 3 amp, super good diodes, 3 amp diodes, and changed the capacitors in there, and not the power supply capacitors, the ones across the diodes and all that. I put the real high quality stuff in there, and it makes a difference. You know how you can tell when you turn the thing on without a step start, it thumps the floor. Because those the bigger diodes, the newer, modern, bigger diodes, obviously can pass a lot more current.
Ray, I only wanted to hear 3 words from you.
What are they? I hope they're not "I love you."
No. Ray said so.
That'll work.
There you go. Over.
How you doing, Ray?
Hello, who's this?
Oh, boy. You ain't got used to my voice yet, Cape Cod. K1VOY.
Well, you don't talk here much.
I do a lot of listening. I learned a lot from you. Remember?
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
I just stopped by to say hello. I'm listening, K1VOY.
Okay, well, keep on listening, because it's kind of an interesting conversation tonight. So, Bob, have you soaked up that chart yet?
I'm soaking.
Well, I just consider that such an interesting chart.
Yep, it's interesting, the elevation gain for the 4 different verticals.
Right, now here's the problem. See, Randy and I have figured this out a long time ago, but most people haven't. Here's the problem with that whole thing. Average Joe Ham puts up a quarter wave vertical. He connects it's isolated from ground. He connects a piece of RG8 coax to it, and he connects the braid to his ground system, rather Mickey Mouse, but it works. Okay, it works because the bigger the antenna is, when you go from an infinitely short vertical to a quarter wave to a half wave to a 5/8 wave, the bigger the antenna is, of course, and where the node is, the current node, it depends a hell of a lot less on the ground systems. Now, Joe average, let's say he puts up a half wave dipole, it's going to work pretty damn good, even if he does a Mickey Mouse job. And the quarter wave is going to work a little worse, but it'll still work okay. But see, if you put that little antenna up and you're not using big, wide, 2-inch, 3-inch wide copper strap and everything to put everything together, it's not going to work at all. And that's the problem with the smaller antennas. You got to use that really good engineering. And you probably never heard this, but 10 years ago I was out at the Cape, and I had brought my good new binoculars at the time, my Steiners, with me, and there's a Coast Guard station there, and I was looking at their antenna, and what they're using is an antenna very similar to the antenna you have. It's about 30 feet high, might have been, it looked to be maybe 30 feet high, and it's probably a spiral like you have, and the tuning unit was right at the base of it, mounted right on the wooden pier, right under the antenna, but the copper strap driving that antenna was 3 inches wide. It was 3-inch wide copper strap, and that tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And when we were talking before about where the current maximum is, it's got to be right at the bottom. And that's where his comment is about this plot assumes zero ground losses. When a non-optimum ground system is used, careful attention must be given to the antenna's radiation resistance, which is a direct correlation of the antenna height. So if you get a short one, then you get a non-optimum ground system, then, you know, you'll probably still get that pattern there, but your efficiency will be way, way down, and, you know, you'll get that radiation pattern that you see in the picture, but the magnitude's going to be nothing, I'm guessing.
Well, the amazing thing is when Randy's out in his mobile unit. Now, that mobile unit, even though that is a very good antenna, that what is that called? The Hi-Q, that Hi-Q HF. What is it? It's an IQ. It's a Hi-Q 10-160. That's what it is. And even though it's a very good antenna, it is still, you know, very inefficient compared to something that you can build in your yard. Of course, the one in your yard you can't use on multiple bands, but the one in your yard, I'm really sure you can get 10 dB better performance on the one in your yard, because the driven element in the coil is going to be so much larger and everything. But then again, Randy's truck is bonded. I think he's got 40 ground straps on it, so and that makes a huge difference. But his performance from that thing is astounding. It's truly astounding. Half the time, like he's talking to down to South Carolina, and his signal from his mobile is stronger than me down in South Carolina. So you can imagine if you built one of those antennas like you have in your yard, and you did it just for this one frequency and did it right. I find it very hard to believe, very, very hard to believe that short antenna wouldn't outperform just about anything else. Now, the other important thing is that one of the things I like about the shorter antenna is it has a higher angle of radiation, which I think is going to be beneficial to guys like you and me, because we don't need a 0 degree angle of radiation. We need an angle of radiation theoretically. I would if I could, you know, God came down and said pick your angle, I would take 45 degrees, because 45 is going to give you a perfect between straight up and right on the horizon. Now, here's something else even more interesting. Did you ever do any VHF work?
No, just on repeaters, but not. Do you mean single sideband?
Well, you know, anything with high performance VHF antennas. I went crazy with that. Because I was a tech, so I had an incredible setup on 2 meters. And I ended up really getting into this long distance 2 meter stuff, which was a great deal of fun. But it's not for the weak faint. It's not for the faint of heart, because my antenna, I was running 4 9-element beams in a collinear stack, which is side by side. You know, they weren't stacked in H-frame, weren't stacked vertical. They were stacked side by side. And that was the greatest antenna system I have ever seen. And do you happen to have the UHF Experimenter's Manual?
I do not.
Okay, well, there's a really good article in there, and your math skills may come into play on that, because I told you I don't have any math skills. But there's a very, very interesting thing in there, and it's one of the things that everybody has to try to understand about radio, and very, very few people do understand about radio, and that is the scatter mode. I'm sure you've heard of that, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Well, there's very few people that really understand the scatter mode. And I've tried in desperation with guys, say, on 11 meters that, they want to learn something. There's a certain group of those guys who want to learn, but they don't really want to put any effort into learning. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can't even explain it myself. It's like when you try to explain something to them, it's too hard for them to contemplate, so they just don't even try. You know, it's one of those deals. But anyway, there's the scatter mode. Now, the scatter mode is here's the beauty of the scatter mode. It works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it doesn't depend on temperature. It doesn't depend on time of year. It doesn't depend on anything. It's always there, and it's always working, and it's always within a 1 or 2 dB. Okay, you follow that so far?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, now, in order to get the scatter mode to work, you have to have an awful lot of gain on your antenna system. And that gain has to come off the antenna at a very low angle of radiation. And that angle of radiation, the closer to zero you get, the better it is. So let's say you're trying to let's say your buddy is in Michigan on 2 meters, which is that we had a schedule with a guy in Sandusky, Michigan. And we talked to him every single week for 1 full year. So we made 52 contacts with him over the course of a year. So, you know, just to prove sort of that we could do it. And he had a very poor setup over there. But this is the thing, and this comes into play with any frequency you're on, just with a variance of the frequency and the angles you're talking about. But okay, so let's say you're trying to talk to a guy 550 miles away on VHF. So in order to do that right, your antenna has to be 100 feet above the ground on both ends. Now, at 2 meters, with the wavelength of a 2-meter signal, at 100 feet above the ground, the angle of radiation coming off the antenna with respect to Earth is under 1 degree. Okay, you follow that so far?
Yep.
Now, here's the very, very, very interesting part. If you change the angle of radiation coming off the antenna by 1 degree positive, so in other words, let's say your angle of radiation, and realistically it'd probably be 0.8 degrees, 0.8. So if you change that angle to 1.8 degrees at 550 miles, you're going to lose 10 dB of signal. If you can fathom what I just said, then you really just learned everything you'll ever need to know about communicating by the scatter mode, because the scatter mode works on, and of course it's much more prevalent on the higher frequencies, but on 10 meters, 11 meters, 12 meters, 6 meters, and 2 meters. The scatter mode works on all those bands. And the range will get shorter and shorter as you go down in frequency, because the angle of radiation gets higher and higher very rapidly with the increasing wavelength. So, for instance, on 2 meters, the antenna has to be 100 feet above the ground to get under 1 degree angle of radiation. On 6 meters, I believe it'd have to be like 480 feet above the ground to get the same angle of radiation. So, let's say on 6 meters at 100 feet, the angle of radiation with respect to Earth might be 5 degrees, and that really knocks your signal down essentially by 40 or 50 dB out in tropo land, which means that instead of having a 550 mile range, you're only going to be able to have a 350 mile range. Although I have made consistent contacts out to 450 miles on 6 meters, but it's usually easier on 2 because of the angle of radiation, and of course the gain's higher on 2.
So the scatter, is it tropospheric scatter?
I don't know. You know, that's a good question. I'd have to look it up in that book. I just call it the scatter mode. I wouldn't call it tropospheric scatter. Tropo is different. Tropo is the temperature inversion stuff. But there's another interesting thing. The U.S. government wanted a signal path between Greenland and the U.S. and or Greenland and the mainland here. And what they ended up doing, I think their transmitter's up north somewhere. It might be up north, up in Maine. It might be in Maine. It might be in Nova Scotia. I don't know what it is. But anyway, the path between here and Greenland was about 850 miles. And what they were trying to get around, they were trying to get around any possibility of solar activity with sunspots, under bad conditions. You know how the bands quit working. And in a nuclear war, the ionization of the atmosphere is going to cause problems, and HF allegedly won't work. So, and this is a very good article I read, 20 years ago. I think it was in Ham Radio Magazine. So anyway, the path distance was 850 miles. What frequency did they use?
Yeah, you already told me this one. I know it.
Yeah, 460 megahertz was the frequency they used, which I always thought that was extremely interesting. But and then for the same reason, because with a professional system on 460, they can get probably 28 dB a gain on both ends, and the antenna can be up to 150, 200 feet. So therefore, their angular radiation's very close to zero on both ends, and anyway, the point is they could make that path at 850 miles, and that's quite the challenge, because that would be awful hard for a ham to do.
Yeah, I'll have to look at it, KT2D. I think what they're doing, if it is what I think it is, that I read before, is the tropospheric scatter. You're not using, it's not ionospheric. It's lower level, and it's the wavelengths that you use are able to be refracted by the turbulence or the moisture that's in the troposphere. It actually bends it around. I'm guessing. I may be talking about a different thing, but it sounds like that's what they're doing. But I think you get a lot of losses, and you need, like you were talking about, you need really high gain antenna arrays to do it.
Well, that antenna that I used with the 4 antennas in a row was particularly good. Very, very, very good at scatter. And my theory, and again, it's only a theory because nobody really knows, but I've argued this point with hundreds of people through my career, and none of them ever listened to me, but I believe the reason that antenna works so good is 2 reasons. Number one, when you stack the antenna side by side, the vertical lobe is very wide. You don't narrow the vertical lobe. So I was running a nine element beam. So anyway, let me think about this. Yeah, the vertical lobe will be the same as a single 9-element beam, and of course the horizontal lobe across the azimuth will be 1/4 of the beam width of a single antenna. So anyway, the long and short of it is I had an 8.5 degree beam width across the azimuth and probably a 45 degree beam width vertically. And I think the reason that works so good on that scatter mode is because I believe you get ground gain. You can get about 5 dB of ground gain when the signal hits the ground and bounces off. And I kind of think that's one of the things that does it. Plus the fact that that they call it a discontinuity. The word they always use is the signal reflects off the discontinuities in the atmosphere, which is anything, dust, temperature, moisture, anything like that. But that signal that reaches the point of in between the two stations, 500 miles, or basically 250 miles out at a 0 degree angular radiation, the point where the two signals cross is about 33,000 feet, and that's where all the action is.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. I'm reading up on it as you're talking too, and that's pretty neat stuff.
Well, if you had that UHF Experimenter's Handbook, there's one paragraph in there that is sort of talking about what I'm talking about, and they give you a formula, and they tell you that the let me think how they put it, You can only go so narrow. In other words, the beam width can't go below, I think it's 4 degrees. If you go narrower than a 4-degree beam width, you lose. I mean, there are people that know about this stuff. It's unfortunate. Maybe if you have a computer and you got to the right site, there is somebody that really knows. But, I was using 8.5 degrees, but I think you're limited to 3 degrees. I think they said 3 to 4 degree beam width across the horizon. And there was other stuff, and the gain of the antenna has to. There's a one sentence in that thing that sort of explains it, but you kind of have to. I have to read it over and over and over to get the gist of what they're trying to say, and I'm not even sure they know what they're trying to say. But the gain of the antenna is very important also, and it's not a linear curve. That's the thing. I realized that a long time ago. It's not really a linear curve. The big stations can do it, and the small stations can't do it, because you just have to put a lot of energy out there at 33,000 feet. Okay, well anyway, that same thing works for all the different frequencies. It works here, it works everywhere. But down here the angles are so far off that it's almost useless. N1 DVL.
KT2D.
I used to talk to Gary down there in North Carolina. He used to live in Delaware and Maryland. He lived in both states. And I used to be able to talk to him when he was driving around there mobile from my base station here on 2 meters.
So, did you have your antennas just horizontal, or did you have them aimed up a little bit?
No, you can't do that. They have to be absolutely... they have to be parallel with the surface of the Earth. If you aim them up, you lose. If you aim them down, you lose. You've got to be, that signal hopefully has to leave the antenna at 0 degrees with respect to Earth. But anyway, he was about 315 miles out, and I could talk to him driving around down there in his car with very little difficulty.
Boy, I'll tell you, that's amazing.
Well, that's the thing about VHF I really, really liked. I mean, somebody who's really good with antennas and preamps and feed lines and, with a good radio system. It's just truly amazing what you can do on VHF. I really think you could probably make, I'm pretty sure you could probably talk from here to Georgia on VHF consistently. But you'd have to have really, you'd have to have 4,000 or 5,000 watts, and you'd have to have 6 or 8 antennas. But I think it could be done. One time when I had a computer, I got on the computer and I said, calling all big guns. And I tried to line up a schedule. And I did line up a schedule with a guy in Georgia. And we got on and called each other, for about a half an hour one night. And I could hear his signal, out of that half hour, I probably heard him 3 or 4 times with a burst. It was probably a meteor burst. All of a sudden, I'd hear him, for, a third of a second or something like that. You'd hear 2 or 3 of his letters in his call, and you'd hear it perfect, and then bang, it would be gone. But that just proves to me that if you really had the big, big, big stuff, you could do it.
Yeah, but you're talking about you got to have some good skills there. Your average guy isn't gonna. You got to be dedicated. You got to pay attention to dimensions and connections and feed line, all that stuff. You can't skimp on any of that.
Well, that's why, for any of these guys here on the Toad Harbor net to all of a sudden decide they're going to go up on 2 meters, they'd have the shock of their lives. They wouldn't, after the first time they put up one antenna, they'd realize they were up against something they don't really want to be up against.
Yes, I was toying around with it a couple of years ago. I thought, I'd like to do these VHF contests, be a rover and all of that. So I started digging into it, and I'm going, I'm not there yet. That's some pretty high-powered stuff there.
With a radio like this Kenwood because all these new radios are they're transverter ready. You'd go out and you'd buy a real top of the line transverter for $2, and then you run that into a 1500 watt amplifier and a gas fed preamp mounted up at the mast, and you'll have 20 at least 20 grand into the system, at least 20, and it's a kind of a very dedicated system, but it would really work really good.
Yeah, you'd have to do something like that, but you could, and that's the transverters have really that's helped you do it, because you can use a nice front end radio rather than something in an aluminum box that's good for one frequency.
Well, I was just using an ICOM 746 for the radio with a good gas-fed preamp up at the antenna, and it worked good. It worked okay, but they're right on the ragged edge of getting overloaded all the time. And again, it's just so much work. I mean, 2 or 3 times a year, I'd have to take the array down. I'd work on it from the sun up till sundown. And if I was really lucky, I'd get it done in one day. And I mean, by the time I came in at night, I was so exhausted that I was just ready to collapse on the floor. I mean, in every possible way you can think of, you're just ready to just fall right on your face. And that was 10 or 15 years ago. I could never do that now.
That's a real dedication to do that, and but from everything I've read on it, it's a dedication, and it takes a lot. KT Tootie.
Well, I still have my 6-meter set up here because I got this radio works on 6, and I have a 6-meter amplifier, and I had a beautiful 6-meter antenna which I cannibalized and sold, but I could always get another one of those. And I was willing to get on 6 with everybody, but again, the average guy here just doesn't realize how much effort it takes to put up a VHF system that works correctly.
Yeah, and you wouldn't unless you dug into it, because it's a different realm really. Then when you get up real high, or you go the other end, you look at these ELF stations that they use to send the extremely low frequencies to the submarines. That's pretty.
Yeah, that's the same kind of deal. I mean, that system they use is akin to the Tropo system that I was using, except it's just at a different frequency. But that really just goes to show you what it takes to really do it right. Now, if hams were using that same frequency they were using, we could communicate on 18 or 20 kilohertz and talk to anybody anywhere in the world.
But you look at the length of those antennas and the power they have to put into them. But you're exactly right. You look at some of the plots on what their coverage area is from like Michigan. It's amazing.
I always said, if you have enough time and effort and money, you can talk to anybody, anywhere, on any frequency. I had an electrical engineer one time I used to talk to on one of the local repeaters, and he was pretty sharp, N1DVL, and I asked him a question one day. I said, how much power would it take if you were on the moon with a dipole antenna on sideband? How much power would it take to communicate back to Earth? Okay, so you have a dipole antenna up on the moon, and you have a sideband 2-meter rig. You're not going to have an overload problem because there's nobody else up there. So how much power does it take to get back to the Earth?
Boy, I have no idea, Ray.
Well, I was very surprised about this. He took him a long time to do it, and he gave me the answer. It's 50 milliwatts.
Well, there's less than that. So yeah, that's interesting. A dipole, they've used, like these deep space probes and those things. They all have high gain dishes and stuff, but they're not putting out a lot of power, so they're doing the directional antenna. But yeah, that's interesting. I would never have guessed that.
Well, the MFJ antenna analyzers. I had a friend that I used to talk to on VHF all the time, and he was in Pennsylvania, 196 miles away, and we could both hear the other guy's MFJ antenna analyzer with no problem at all. No, absolutely no problem at all. You could hear it, no sweat, and they put out 10 milliwatts.
Yeah, interesting.
And even here, we've put our MFJs on this frequency, and you sweep across the frequency, and you can hear it 300 or 400 miles away. Gary down there in North Carolina, he had a military manpack unit because he does work for, he was a G-man, and he had one of those state-of-the-art military manpack units, and he was out in his yard with it, and we could talk to him on 160.
I guess if the conditions are right, it just, what was he using for an antenna? Was it the antenna that came with the manpack?
Yes, it was. Yep, just the whip that came with the manpack. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'll tell you, they put some good equipment together. That mil-spec stuff is pretty good.
Will those DU penetrators always penetrate an Abrams tank, no matter where it's hit? I can't believe they wouldn't.
So when you start getting into stuff like that, it gets really classified really fast. So you try to armor your vehicle to protect against the threat that you perceive, so and it's impossible to armor the whole vehicle 100%, so you have what they call like a 60-degree frontal arc, so then you can see how thick the armor is. If you look at a picture of an Abrams from above, you can see where the welds are and everything, and the armor these days on modern tanks isn't all solid. It's space laminated and all kinds of weird things in there to try to disrupt the rods or the shape charges. So the front slope and the front skirts and the front 60-degree arc of the turret is the most heavily armored, and you have a hard time getting through there. But like I said, it's all probabilistic. If you're lucky, you're lucky. If you're not lucky, you're not.
I mean, there's always a friendly fire incident. Always. You would think by now with the super technology that's out there, that would never happen. And at least it may be back in '91, but it shouldn't happen now.
Yeah, it's the right conditions. Doesn't happen a lot, but under the right conditions at night and all of the other stuff going on. But there are plenty of ways to have IFF stuff, so for sure, and there's yeah. So it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen now and again.
Can I buy one of those new night scopes that doesn't require any light at all yet?
Yeah, I don't know what's out on the market. So the thermal, there's a lot of thermals out there, and there's a lot of light stuff. The trouble with the thermals, if you've ever used those, they require quite a bit of getting used to, and they require some training because we're used to seeing invisible light, not seeing in far IR. So the thermal signature doesn't match the visual signature. So the hybrid ones or the combined ones. They have both of them, so you can see both. So, but the latest generation light amplification are pretty good, but if you can't get them yet, it won't be long before somebody will start selling them, because the commercial market is really where the big money is, believe it or not.
Well, I saw a show, God, it had to be 6, 7, 8 years ago on TV, and they were showing the latest version of the night vision scope, which is, again, infrared. It has nothing to do with light. And they showed it. They went inside a completely blacked out building. It's a gigantic building. It's probably, 300, 400 feet by 300, 400 feet. And it's totally light sealed. There's no light at all inside that building. And you look through that scope, and it looks like the lights are on. It was just amazing. If there's a guy standing on the other end, or a tank, or a helicopter, it doesn't matter. You could the picture I was seeing, it looks just like a picture. I mean, if it was a helicopter, it looked like a helicopter. If it was a tank, it looked like a tank. And if it was a person, it looked like a person. And you could see the gun. If the guy had a gun in his hand, you could see it. And these things can pick up hundredths of a degree difference in temperature. So, I mean, it was just amazing how that thing worked. But, they weren't available. That was probably 8 years ago. And they weren't available to the general public. But I've got a military scope here, a second generation, catadoptic lens job that goes on an AR-15. And, they're okay, but they're nothing like those.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but they've got stuff that really they're just coming along real incredibly fast. On the thermal stuff, they were in the first generation ones, you actually had to have a cold source in there, and it was able to tell the difference between the two of them. You had to have liquid nitrogen or a cryogenic cooler there. Now they're able to have these detectors operating at room temperature and still being able to see a whole spectrum of heat. So it's pretty fascinating, the stuff they're coming up with.
And Bob, you know where this all came from, right?
Yep. Without those fellas, we'd be still cooking on iron skillets.
I always say the same thing. Roswell, 1947.
Yeah, it's amazing the things that developed right after that. Transistors and anyway, the whole list of it.
Do you believe Philip Corso? Do you believe that book's real?
Is Corso? Was he the? Was that Magic? Was it Magic that he wrote?
Philip Corso was the lieutenant colonel that wrote a book, and allegedly his job was to get the alien technology into the American businesses that could capitalize on it and make something out of it. And he would give it to, say he would give Bell Labs something and say, we stole this from, this is a highly classified, this was stolen from a foreign government. It's yours to do with as you wish, but we get first dibs on whatever you can make out of it. And that's what he claims he did. Now, a lot of people say he's full of you-know-what, but I've seen him on TV, and boy, I'll tell you, he gives a good case.
Yeah, I got no reason to doubt him.
Well, the thing is, I've been watching this stuff for years and years, and I've just seen thousands and thousands and thousands of different people and different stories. And, if 50% of them are blatant liars, there's still plenty of information out there to believe it's all real.
I think so, and there's just too much of it that is unexplained. It doesn't wash with the official explanations. KT2D.
N1 DVL. One last thing, and then I'm going. The rest of the guys, go ahead. Have you seen in the last, within the last 6 months, probably even within the last 4 months, but certainly within the last 6 months, there was two very good shots out of an F-18 or an F-16. I think they were F-18s, and they were tracking the guy called it a tic-tac. He says, "Look at this. And this is a military pilot with his heads-up display, and he's tracking one of these UFOs, and he's got it on the display, and he's following it all over the place. And the guy says it looks like a tic-tac. It's just a square box, and it's pulling these high G turns, and it's it's going 400 miles an hour, and that turns around and goes the other way 400 miles an hour, and of course it had no wings or anything."
Yeah, I remember seeing something about that, or reading about it, or maybe it was a clip or something.
Yeah, it was on TV. They showed it. It was actually probably within the last 4 months. They showed two of them, two different pilots, two different airplanes, and they had pictures of something, whatever the hell it was, and it's out there flying around, and they're following it.
Yeah, I think they were talking back and forth about what it was doing and everything. I saw a clip of it, and I can't remember when.
Yeah, and at the same time, one of our groups of ships out in the ocean somewhere had got buzzed by a UFO for a couple of days.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. I know there was some older ones, World War II vintage or Cold War era. There was some other stuff going on like that, but I hadn't heard of the recent one.
Maybe if Trump gets elected again, we can get him to start opening up a little bit about this stuff.
What do you mean, if?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, he's getting elected again. I don't see how he could lose. The only way he can lose if they let in 40 million Central American people and let them vote.
Well, there's got to be a lot of signs out on my lawn, Ray. This is K1RMA.
Right. Well, I got my Trump hat. I got my Trump hat right in the back of my car, so I'm ready to throw her on as soon as he gets ready to run.
Good for you.
In Massachusetts, you used to be able to have one of those stun things, that shoots the high voltage electricity, and about a year ago they made them illegal because of some stupid law they passed, but it wasn't intended to make them legal, but they're not legal now, and they were the people, the senators or whatever, the useless people in the government are trying to straighten it out so people can carry those again. But I'm going to go get one of those, and I have one, but it's not a real good one. It's not one of the more modern ones. But if I got to go see the police. That's a good question. I got to go talk to them. But when that thing gets made legal again, I'm going to buy a real good one of those. And if somebody tries to steal my Trump hat, I'm going to have to zap them.
Just be careful you don't get sued.
Hey, if a guy's all over you, it goes both ways. If you're over 62 or 65 in the state of Massachusetts, and somebody attacks you or punches you or anything like that, that's a felony.
Oh, really? Huh, son of a gun. I wonder if it's the same way in my state as well.
I don't know, but this state has some of the craziest laws, and one of the laws, and it definitely is a fact here in Mass, if it's either 62 or 65, if a guy 30 or 40, which is going to be some young kid, punches a guy my age, that is a felony right there, and I would go all the way with it. I'd say, you know what? either you arrest this guy or I have to take care of it myself, one or the other, And that's a tough thing to when some young guy's beating up some old guy. That's a tough thing to walk away from for the cops. They probably love to, but they'd have a hard time doing it.
Yeah, you're right, Ray. Anyway, I'm going to bow on out here, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other guys in here that have been listening. It's interesting conversation, very, very much so. But I'm going to bail on out. This is K1RMA. I'll be saying 73.
Okay, yeah, the other guys, go ahead. You're talking long enough. I've been waiting Randy come back, but Randy's got an audience, so he probably won't be coming back. N1 DVL. Go ahead, let's see, Mark and Russ. Come on, Russ. I know you're there. You're probably doing. I don't know. Are you doing your heating system tonight? It's kind of warm out.
I'm still here.
Yeah, but I can barely hear you.
Oh, you're doing good. You had some very good, interesting conversation in there, I gotta confess.
Yeah, who is this?
Victor Echo 1, Charlie Mike Delta.
Where are you?
On Beaufort Island, Nova Scotia, Canada.
Oh, Nova Scotia. Okay, maybe that's why the signal's weak. But you're running 100 watts, right?
Almost 40 over here.
Well, this is what you sound like, and believe you me, I'm sure you can hear me better than I can hear you. But anyway, this is 100 watts. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're 9+910 there, going.
Okay, and I'll make it really fair. I'll shut the speech processor off. So that's 100 watts without speech processing. Can you still hear me?
Well, yes, haven't made over.
Yeah, but you can hear everything I'm saying? Yeah, I got an awful lot of noise down here. I got a lot of lightning noise, but they're back up to 1,000 watts and the processor back on.
Yeah, no, you're doing a good job. Yeah, just running barefoot here, not running much, just an old
Do you have an amplifier?
It's short, not very long. Probably 50 feet to a leg, so over 100 feet over the highway.
I didn't get one word you said that time. Do you have an amplifier?
No amplifier.
Yeah, I didn't get anything that time. You're getting taken out by lightning spikes. Answer me one more question. What kind of radio are you running? FT990, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, very good. I got that. As long as there's no lightning spikes, I can hear you, but it's pretty noisy down here. Are you getting them up where you were? Oh, I guess he couldn't hear me either. Okay, N1 DVL. Anybody else in here? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, they're getting lightning noise in there for sure. Anyway, buddy, we won't hold you. Good conversation. Nice to meet you there. And I know you don't like to talk to these long stations, but I do appreciate it. You like that?
Okay, I'm only getting bits and pieces of what you're saying. So anyway, 7-3.
stuff going on. They must have taken off.
Man, it's just damn noisy tonight.
I'm back.
What's up? What's up, Ray?
Who's this? Nothing much.
It's Bob, KD2INX.
Okay, wow. Either your signal's low or it's really noisy, one or the other.
Well, I'm only pushing 100 watts, and I'm not going to stay long, but I just want to say hi.
Oh, okay. I thought it was you, but I wasn't sure because it's so noisy in here tonight.
Yeah, I know. It's very noisy. But what are you going to do? It's to be expected.
Well, it's just going to get worse, that's for sure.
I'm waiting for my wind turbine noise to come down enough that my radio will unsquelch.
You use squelch on sideband? Oh, you have to because of what you're doing.
Yeah, because if I don't have zero band noise on the squelch, I can't transmit.
Right, so that's kind of a pain in the neck when it's noisy in the summertime, isn't it?
Yeah, especially when Ray doesn't take a break.
Are you oiling your furnace?
I went down to check it. It's cooking. We had to kick it back on because it was real low throughout the day. It was kind of warm here yet, but now we're starting to drop below 40 degrees and the winds are continuing to get pretty bad tonight, so we're kicking it back up.
Now, once you walk away from that, does that run by itself all night long? I guess you didn't hear me. Once you walk away from that and go to bed, does that run by itself all night long?
really acting up here. It's a lot of QSB and a lot of noise coming in.
Yes, Ray, it does all night long.
Is there any chance that thing could catch fire and burn the place down?
No, Ray, there's no chance of that happening.
Okay, very good. I don't want to get your new 890 smoke damaged.
No, it's the way it's set up is that even if it overfires, it's not going to burn anything or do any damage. It'll just make a lot of hot water. But it's only allowed to drip at a certain rate because of the adjustment on the drip valve, so it can't go any faster than what it is.
Yeah, you're very, very noisy. Is that the lightning static taking you out, or is it something else going on?
The amplifier is only half-mast right now.
Well, time to buy that LA1K.
Yeah, it is a noisy night, KA2EXB.
Yeah, like the other fellow said there, there's a lot of QSB on the band tonight. Conditions must be poor tonight.
But what's making all the static on your transmission? Is it lightning static, or there's something else going on?
Might be wind across the microphone on the HT. I'm outside right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Okay. What are you doing outside?
Picking up some junk that I threw over the edge of the roof earlier today when I was doing the antenna work, and I forgot to pick it up. And Junior's out here working on his car. So I'm out here checking on him from time to time, too.
He's working on his car now?
It's a long story. I'm not going to get into it on the air. I don't have your characteristics.
Okay. Well, it's two cars that broke today. You had the one down there and Randy's company.
Well, this one wasn't really broke, but it was a, gee, I should have did it before, and now it's going to cost me 2 front new tires because I should have did both sides when I did the one.
Yeah, okay.
It was a KA2 station that came in, I think.
Well, if there's a guy that wants to get in here, go ahead, N1DBL.
Yeah, okay, very good. This is Steve in Albany, New York, KA2EXB. Transmitting, let's see, about 1,000 watts from the Clipperton L with a half-wave dipole. So hopefully I'm getting out tonight over the noise. Steve in Albany, KA2 electric X-ray beam.
Yeah, hi, Steve. Yeah, I heard you come in. I just thought you threw your call in because I don't think you said anything other than your call, right?
Yep.
So what's the ETA on your other radio?
I don't know. I'm going to give them a call and see what's happening. See if they haven't contacted me yet. They've had it about 3 weeks.
Christ, it should be back all fixed, polished up, ready to go.
Well, I called the owner of the company, and I got him on his cell phone. He was in Cancun, and he said he'd check into it.
Maybe he left town with your radio.
You read my mind.
It was such an expensive radio, he decided to move to Mexico.
The TS2000, you can't buy them new anymore.
Thank God.
I like them because it's soup to nuts. 160 through all the way up.
Yep, you're a typical ham. You want to buy one radio, you want it to cover 0 megahertz up to 14 gigahertz.
Well, I don't know about that. I like HF mostly. Where's the big DX? I got a couple thousand QSL cards here from all over the world.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
What happened? All of a sudden, everybody's gone.
I don't know. Nobody seems too talkative tonight. Just me.
We're all listenative.
Listening to the rain on a tin roof.
Bob, you never, were you aware of the letters that some guy was sending me?
No, I wasn't. I don't. Give me a little more information, Ray. I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's two Bobs in here, so neither one of you probably know, but I don't know, about 2-3 months ago, I started getting these letters in the mail from a retired, allegedly, never told me who he was, but a retired Air Force or Army. I think it was Air Force. I've got the letters here. And he sent me one about 10 pages long, and then he sent me another one, maybe, 4 or 5 pages, and we were sort of like talking about it covertly, and then he sent me about three more. I think I probably got 5 letters all in all typed on a typewriter, no return address, no name, no nothing. He didn't want to be identified, and he asked me not to read the letters over the air, which I never did. But he said I could send them to people. So Randy's got a set, Bruce has got a set, and John has got a set. Ask Randy to send you a set.
Okay, I will. This is KT2D. I guess this was for both Bobs.
Yeah, both Bobs is fine. And this, I'll just quickly touch what it's about. He claims that from the time he went into the military at 18 years old to the time he retired after, I'm assuming, 20 plus years, his whole job was to deal with UFOs. And these are letters of all that information that he allegedly did during his career, doing that work. Very, very, very interesting reading.
Oh yeah, that'll be interesting to read. I'll get a hold of Randy. Thanks.
All I could say is Soylent Green is people.
Like I told Randy, I said either this guy should be writing for Hollywood, or he's got to be telling the truth.
Yeah, I think it should be pretty easy to figure out. May not be, but it might be. KT.
Well, that's why I want Randy to send you a set, because you have a great deal of experience, so you might see a lot of stuff that I didn't see. But as you can tell, I'm just a very firm believer. I can't from my perspective, Bob, I just simply cannot believe that these things do not exist. There's just been way too many sightings. I've seen too many astronauts, and this is very rare when you see these films. I've only seen them. One of them I've only seen once. It was on the History Channel, and it was a couple of the astronauts, and one of them, gave 20 minutes of his encounter with a UFO, and I mean, just plain and simple, no BS, no, you can tell the guy's not lying. He just told the whole story of this encounter he had with a UFO. And from my perspective, there is no way hell a person of that magnitude is going to get on television and tell a BS story like he was telling. The story has to be true.
Because those guys they got a lot to lose, both credibility and any kind of future stuff they want to do. So I'm sure they don't, when they speak out, they don't do it lightly.
Well, the thing is, there's way too many astronauts, way too many that I've seen address the subject, and they're like everybody else. They're just pissed that everything's being hidden from the people.
Yeah, because there'd be mass hysteria or something.
Now, maybe this country could use some mass hysteria. Maybe it'd be good for everybody.
I'm going to check out. Starting to get cold out here. My tootsies are getting cool. We'll talk to you tomorrow night, God willing. KA2EXP.
Okay, Steve. See you later. 7-3. N1 DBL. Your Carl sent his radio back too. You knew that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So his has been gone for, let's see, what's this week? I don't know if he sent it out this week or last week. It should be getting ready to come back. Be interesting to see if that keeps on working after he gets it back this time. N1 DBL.
Oh, they're as good as the Chinamen that worked on it.
Well, I heard a story from someone else that had one of those, and he sent it back for the same reasons, and they put a new screen in it, and they put the preamps were bad, and they fixed it all, and it happened again. The screen went bad again. And if that's true, they might as well just take those radios and throw them in the trash.
Like Samsung, when they came out with the flat screen TVs, they bought all these defective capacitors, and they failed in droves.
Yeah, well, the problem is they've already had 10 radios before that had the screens in them, and they didn't have any trouble with them. Now all of a sudden they're having trouble with just that one model. That's pretty hard to believe.
But you got to ask yourself, where are the screens made?
I have no idea. My guess is they're made in China. That's my guess. That's why I think they failed. They're probably cheap Chinese junk, and they instead of buying them from their Japan supplier for $5 a piece, they're buying them in China for 50 cents a piece.
Oh yeah, like a lot of prescription drugs made in China. If you get what's a regular brand, it's real expensive, but you get a generic. The generic brand is probably made in China or India, and they're finding like fertilizer and poisons and a lot of prescription drugs for blood pressure medicines and diabetes and stuff like that. One I was hearing about was recalled was something for high blood pressure called Valsartan. Over.
Yeah, I'm wondering myself because I take this Toprol. Toprol's the brand name, and Metatoprol. And lately, I swear the stuff doesn't work. I'm taking it, but it doesn't seem to be doing what it's supposed to do. So I was wondering the same thing. The way this world is today, yeah, it could be anything. Okay, anyway, see you later. N1DVL.
By the way, I believe that metoprolol is a blacklisted drug, which means that if you stop it, you can be prone to sudden heart attacks. So if you do decide to quit it, you should, take a couple of weeks and wean yourself off. Over.
Right. Well, that's exactly it. I mean, that's the point. I'm taking it, but I swear it doesn't work like it used to. I'm wondering the same thing. I think these are made in India, and maybe they're just not being made right or something. I don't know. Okay, again, see you later. N1DVL.
7-3.
If you're still there, Bob, just remember Alan Hynek didn't believe in flying saucers either until he investigated several hundred cases, and then he believed.
Was Hynek the guy that was in charge of Project Blue Book?
Yes, he was hired by the Air Force to debunk everything, to debunk every single sighting, and that was his job. And he did that very effectively. But then, you saw it on Project Blue Book. Then they just made him out and out lie about it. No matter what it was, they forced him to come up with some stupid reason that was not true.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. I've been, because I've seen a number of specials on him, and then of course the Project Blue Book series. I thought they're doing a real good job of that. So, and I did a little bit of research on him. So that's pretty interesting. Yep. They hire him to debunk him, and then after a while he says, I can't be doing this.
Well, are you aware that somewhere up in Maine, where they have nuclear weapons stored, or no, it's either a nuclear power plant or missiles. I forgot what it was, but it's somewhere in Maine, and they either have missiles or generator or nuclear weapons. And I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, a UFO came there several nights in a row, like really a lot of times, like I don't know, 4 or 5 nights in a row, and it would just sit right there, and everybody was sitting there looking at it, and it wasn't very far away, and it would just sit there motionless over the building that it was surveilling, whatever it is. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
I heard of this, and I'm thinking it might have been a power plant if it was recent, because I don't think there are anything else up there except maybe Portsmouth and Naval Yard, which is actually in the southern, it's in Kittery, but I thought it might have been a power plant.
Well, it was some base. Is it Prescott Isle or something?
Okay, so there was Loring Air Force Base way up in the north, and Presque Isle is there, but the SAC base was Loring.
Well, I don't know which one it was. But anyway, a UFO came there a number of years ago, and it showed up night after night, and everybody was there. Now, here's the thing that comes to my mind. Let's say you put one of those Abrams tanks there with that DU penetrator at the highest velocity you could possibly get, and you prop the tank up, and you put that night vision scope right on that saucer, and you pulled the trigger. If that didn't shoot it down, then I would immediately throw in the towel.
Yeah, it would be a good test, because if that could deflect it or something, because that's although that's probably not the ultimate that we can do. It's certainly a lot harder to defeat than missiles. I mean, missiles, come up there, but they're basically flimsy things, and they have fragmentation warheads, So, yeah, that would be an interesting test.
And just everybody have a white flag ready. And if he pulls the trigger on that thing and that bounces off and the saucer is still sitting there, everybody bring out their white flags.
Yeah, so I would advise that we just don't provoke these. Like I was saying the other night, if they have the capability of interstellar travel, these aren't folks we wanna provoke and don't want to prod and poke sticks at and take shots at. It's just not a good thing.
Yeah, let's go over a yellow jet or lawnmower and with shorts on and see what happens.
I seen that there was a yellow jacket nest one time up by the swimming pool, and it was huge. It was a big hole in the ground, and a guy parked the lawnmower right over the top of it and just left it running, and I think it killed just about all of them. Of course, in the old days, I mean, I'm talking back in the 60s, a friend of mine had a bee's nest at a cellar, one of his cellar windows in his cellar, the square cellar windows on the side of the foundation. And there was a bee's nest there. It had to be, 18 inches long. And I don't know what they were. They were those white-faced hornets, I think. And if you even went near the thing, they'd pour out of there and they'd chase the hell out of you. So one day we decided to get some Ortho. Do you remember Ortho? Ortho was a great bug killer back then. It was the real stuff, not like the crap they have today. And you couldn't even get near this thing. And we put it in a squirt gun, not a squirt gun, but like an oil can squirt gun. And I think it was him. He ran up about 30 feet from it, and he squirted about 3 or 4 times, and then he took off running. And one drop of that Ortho got on the nest, just one drop. And the next day, every one of them was dead. There wasn't one left.
Yeah, those white-faced hornets you cannot outrun. I'm telling you, they can fly about 60 miles an hour.
Well, I had a nest of them here, and I have these bushes that are in my driveway. There's they have those beautiful pink flowers on them. I don't know what they are. Arborvitae? No, I don't know. What are those things? They come up with beautiful pink flowers, and they got leaves that are maybe 3 or 4 inches, and they're oval green leaves. They're up there all. They stay on all winter long. What are those called?
Pansies.
What are they?
Rhododendron?
I don't know. But anyway, there was this huge white-faced hornet's nest in there, big, huge nest. And I would be on my deck, and I start seeing these hornets going by me left and right. And finally, I figured out the nest was in there. So what I did was, I've got this pump up. I got it for shooting the hornets that build nests in the side of your house. They drill the holes, those wood bees, whatever. So anyway, I filled it up with the killer, the poison you have nowadays. I forgot the name of the stuff I use, but it's the best stuff you can get. And I mixed it about 10 times its strength. I mean, really, at least 10 times. And I soaked that nest. It was just dripping stuff. And it took me 3 times soaking that nest before all those things died. Now, if that was the old stuff back in the old days, all you'd have to do is just hit it one time, and the next day everything's dead. The chemical bug killers they make now just are terrible.
Yeah, what I do, Ray, is I just avoid them. If they want to live in there, I just stay away from them.
Yeah, but I couldn't because it was right on my deck. That's right there. And when I sat there having lunch, they were just constantly pouring. I was about tops 15 feet from them, 10 to 15 feet when I sit on the deck and have dinner and lunch. And you just couldn't sit there because they were just pouring in and out of there all day long. And if they see you move, you know they're going to come after you. So I had to take care of them. First, I shot about 100 holes through it with my Daisy pump BB gun, and then I soaked it with that chemical stuff. And it took 3 full days, and I soaked it 3 different times before they were finally all dead.
Oh, okay. So they were close to, yeah, and if you're sitting out there that close, and when you bring food out, they smell food, because if they're hornets or wasps, they're carnivores, and they will go after a piece of meat.
Right. Well, anyway, I finally got rid of them. I'll tell you one really very, very interesting story. When I was a kid, we used to go to Lavallette, New Jersey, every summer. The relatives from up in Springfield would meet the relatives down in New Jersey, and we'd go down to southern Jersey to Lavallette, Sun City, Surf City, whatever. The beautiful New Jersey beaches, which was the place we went, was Lavallette. And we'd rent a cottage. All 3 families would rent a cottage, and there was the main drag that went parallel with the ocean. And then there were side streets they weren't that long. They were probably, maybe, I don't know, 200 feet, 300 feet at the most, 200 to 300 feet long. And there was a whole bunch of side streets that came off the main drag and went right down to the ocean. And then you'd have to walk up the big hill and then onto the ocean, onto the beach. Every single night, right at dusk, right when it started getting dark, there was this big truck. Not big, it looked like a friendly ice cream truck. It looked like the trucks that the guys used to sell ice cream bars out of. And it had a big fan on the back, just like one of those swamp boats. And they would drive down every street at night spraying DDT. And it was so thick that you couldn't, if you ran through the DDT, you could see about 3 feet. And after 3 feet, you couldn't see anything because the mist was so thick. And all the kids used to run down the street to street to street, following the trucks, playing hide and seek in the DDT. So just in case any of you ever wonder what really happened to me when I was a kid, there's the answer.
Hey, I'll tell you, Ray, I remember that too. When I was a kid, and they would have the trucks and the DDT was a putter, and I learned later on that fog was kerosene. They would dissolve it in kerosene or some oil, and then it was just, you're breathing it in. It's all over. I remember that.
Now the thing that's so amazing is, they got rid of DDT 30 years ago because it's so deadly a poison. Now it's pretty hard to believe it's that deadly of a poison, because every one of those kids would be dead by now.
Yeah, it's yeah.
What's worse now is the glyphosates with the Roundup and all that stuff. That's going to be the next real big problem for several generations.
Well, let me tell you a little secret. They lost that lawsuit out in California for like $73 million. And that was the test case. And another guy won like a 27. One guy got 73. They gave another guy like 175 million, and the judge lowered it to 70. I think the judge lowered it to 73 million. That's what it was. The jury gave him 175 million, and the judge lowered it to 73 million, and the other guy won like 45 million. And now they said those were the test cases, and he said, and this was on TV about 3 or 4 days ago, 5 days ago, and now they said there's literally thousands upon thousands of cases stacked up behind those that are going to sue. So they're all done. They're done. They're out of business. In all honesty, Monsanto's right up here, by the way. Monsanto's about, probably, 6 or 8 miles from where I am, right here. And in all honesty, they should be. I think they should be.
They have I don't think most people realize the extent of damage that they did in the, must have been 5 decades now that they've really been using that on an agricultural level for food production as well as for weed control. But the agricultural level that they've been using it, the damage that they've done to the food crops and to people, and the cancer that's going to start showing its ugly head here in numbers that are just going to be staggering. I don't think there's enough they could do to them.
Well, I don't think losing Monsanto and all their genetically modified plants will hurt anybody. I think it's a good thing. And me, now every time I go to the store, everything I buy is organic. If I can get it in organic, I get organic. So I just refuse to eat that crap anymore.
Yeah, it take a while to get rid of all that genetically modified Roundup Ready stuff too. They're going to have to get rid of all of that. Corn, wheat, all of that product. It's terrible, terrible, terrible. It's killing people, and it's killing livestock, and that's also what happened to all the bees. You know, you kept hearing about all the bees disappearing. Well, it's doing it too.
Has anybody ever proven that?
Well, it's anybody tries to put 2 and 2 together, they got people to take care of that and get squashed that down. There are billions and billions of dollars at risk with this, Ray. They're not just going to let some little, bee-loving Greenpeace dude come up and ruin their whole monopoly. They get rid of these people.
Oh, I understand that, but what I'm saying is with these huge lawsuits that they're going to be losing every second now, they're going to be sued right out of business. You know what they'll do? They're right here in what town are they in? They're in Ludlow. I think they're in. Let's see, is that Ludlow? No, that's not. That could be Ludlow. I don't know. It's either Ludlow or Indian Orchard or wherever. But it's right here, right on a river. They used to dump all those chemicals into the river. That's why they were there, because every single bit of chemical crap that they didn't want, they used to put right into that river. And of course, who knows? They're probably still doing it today. But anyway, what a big plant! If you ever saw this plant, it's like a city. It's hidden. It's really hidden in this real sneaky spot. But there's a few places now where roads go by, and if you go by at night, it looks like a gigantic city of huge, tall, 300-foot buildings, and they're all those big cracking towers and everything, and they're all lit up, and they're all going all the time.
So if I'm heading out east on the Mass Pike, is that the one that I see off to the right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty, there's some massive stuff going on there. I noticed it a lot.
Yep, and the stuff they make is just all poison. I don't think there's one good thing that comes out of there.
Is that the Chicopee River they're on?
I don't know. I don't know what they call that river. Is that that's probably the Chicopee River.
I'll tell you, I mean, I use Roundup, on my walkways and stuff like that, so, we'll see.
Well, just don't breathe the fumes from it. Well, look what Agent Orange did. I mean, Agent Orange is Roundup on steroids. It's probably 10,000 times stronger than Roundup. And they used to spray that out of those planes in Vietnam, and everybody that had anything to do with that got sick.
Yeah, it's all the same thing. What is it, dioxin? That's the active thing in it?
I don't know, but that Agent Orange was the most ferocious stuff I've ever seen in my life. They fly over a jungle, and an hour later you fly back, and you could see right down to the ground. There was just nothing left.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine doing that and not one person saying, geez, maybe this is bad. I know it's war and everything, but anyway, getting off the end here. Just, geez.
Well, you would think that those guys in those airplanes and everything would have had, masks on. I mean, you would have thought the military would have given them some good gas masks to wear anytime they were around that, but I never saw any of those guys wearing any.
No, not all the footage I saw didn't show any.
Good evening from AM2KM.
So go ahead, KM2KM N1DVL. Go ahead. What's new with you?
Well, good evening, Ray. And Mark. I heard Mark in there, too. And I was listening to the subject of the conversation, phytoglyphosate. That stuff was also used in Latin America, may still be used, on coca leaf-producing fields with the same sorts of health effects all around. So the stuff just won't go away. It's sort of like what I call a liquid zombie. AM2KM.
Chris, what was Agent Orange? Was Agent Orange the same stuff?
I believe it was the glyphosate stuff. I have to look it up. Don't have my laptop handy. It's the amount of concentration, you know.
Well, yeah, I'm sure Agent Orange was probably 1,000 or 10,000 times stronger.
Yeah, it's absorbed by the leaves. I've used Roundup around here a couple of times in the last 20 years. Very sparingly. Because you can absorb it in your fingers, your skin, you know, when you mix the stuff up and handling a sprayer, that sort of thing. Usually keep the nozzle close to the ground, but the nozzle's leaking, you know. Not good.
No, probably not. I spray my gardens with this stuff every year. Matter of fact, I got to go get some Preen. I'm going to try Preen this year. It's a pellet, and you just put that on, and it's supposed to stop everything from growing. That looks a little safer.
Oh, I haven't heard of that. I'd like to use that in the rows of grapes. Weeds right around the trunk of the vines down, but I'm afraid to put something that'll soak into the soil.
Right, there's the problem right there, you know. You don't know what you can put down there. Nobody's going to tell you the truth if it's safe or not.
Roger, that's why I like the spray on the leaves, and the leaves take the stuff down to the roots, and that's supposed to be the end of it. Now, what happens when the roots decay? Who knows?
Do you remember way back into the 50s, there was a thing called Flit? I think it was called Flit.
I remember hearing about it. I think that was used around the house.
Right. Well, my grandmother had a garden in her yard, and you put that in a sprayer, one of those, you know, hand pump sprayers that had the round can in the front and a pumper, and you pump it and you spray the bushes. She had rose bushes, and there was Japanese beetles on them, and you'd spray it with that Flit, and that would kill all the Japanese beetles, and they'd go away, and it wouldn't kill the plant. Well, years and years and years later, I read that book called The Skunk Works by Ben Rich, and he was saying that when they developed the SR-71 airplane, for a couple of years there was no Flit around, or Flint, or I think it was Flint, no Flint around, because the Flint mixture was almost identical to the fuel that they had to put into the SR-71 to make it be able to fly up at 100,000 feet. And they were using so much of it those first few years that there was none of the stuff around for people to spray in their gardens.
Really? Flit. F-L-I-T, I believe is the spelling of it. And no N in it. I'll be darned.
Well, I'll get the book and I'll read you the excerpt out of it, but it said its chemical makeup is extremely close to the high-altitude fuels they used in the SR-71. And it was, and for a couple of years, there was no Flint around because they used it all in the airplane to go spying.
Well, we had Japanese beetle problems here, but we solved it with what's called Nookie Spore. This is a spore that you put in the ground in a checkerboard pattern every 3 or 4 feet. And it develops, it's a bacteria, right? And all sorts of insects that go through a grub stage in the ground, like the Japanese beetle, are consumed by this after it's sprayed. And after 2 years, this was done around 2005, you no longer have Japanese beetles. I don't know what other grubby sorts of things. We do have grubs around because I see the skunk going after them. But that was a biological control approach to it instead of spraying it after they were out on the leaves, you know.
Well, we had an attack about 25 years ago. We had an attack of those silkworm caterpillars. And when I was in Hamden, they were so bad that the whole entire mountain looked like, and this is in like June or July, looked like winter. There was not one leaf left on any tree on the entire Wilbraham mountain range. That's how bad it was. And I had a guy come up and spray with a truck. And he bought this truck. He bought a truck with a sprayer on it just to do that work. And he quit his job, and that's all he did is spray. And he told me, I paid for the truck and made a good year's pay in one season because the attack from these caterpillars was unbelievable. It was truly unbelievable. You had to see it with your own eyes to believe it. And he was spraying a stuff called 7. And the 7 was supposed to be very, very safe because I asked him, because he'd be spraying like up 40, 50. I had trees that were 70 feet tall, and he was spraying all up in the top of the trees, and this stuff was raining down on top of him, and he was getting soaked by it and everything. And I said, "What are you, crazy?" I said, "Isn't that dangerous?" He goes, "No, this stuff is not dangerous at all." He said, "It's really not like you think it is." And I said, "Wow, I hope so." Or I said, "Or you're going to be dead." Now, later that year or the next year, I saw a guy on TV. They were having a big fight over this 7 out in California about spraying it and how safe it was and everything. And there was a guy out there that poured a glass. He mixed it up, put it in a glass, and he drank the glass of 7. And he said, "I'm going to prove to you that this stuff is not dangerous." And the guy drank the whole glass of 7. Now, they said he walked outside, and about 5 minutes later, he puked it up. But he didn't die from it.
I believe he puked up. I don't know what's in 7. But yeah, I remember that. And in some places, they use like a crop duster.
Yeah, well, that's what they were doing up here with the caterpillars. They were so bad where I was in Hamden that when they got done eating the trees, you could hear them all night long. I mean, when you were laying in bed at night, you just heard this, just this constant noise, and that noise was those caterpillars eating the leaves on the trees, and it was just a drone. I mean, it was you'd be surprised how loud it is. And anyway, they finally ate every bit of the leaves in the trees. And I looked out my back window one day, and behind my house, there was a house behind my house. It went up a hill a little bit, and then the house was about 100 feet away, sideways to the backyard of my house. And both lawns were black. I looked out there, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I said, "What the hell's going on?" And I'm looking, and both lawns were black, and it was millions and millions of these caterpillars came down the trees and went right into his garden. He had a huge garden. It was like 100 feet by 100 feet. And they went into his garden, and by the next day, everything was gone. There was nothing left at all. And then they went into his pine trees. He had those beautiful blue spruce pine trees circling his yard. They went into those trees, and they ate all of those too.
Oh, I've never heard. I saw some parts of down near Norwalk, Connecticut. They had a big problem there. Up here we've had occasionally, but never anything like that. Amazing.
Hey, Ray, were those sea moth or tent caterpillars? Because I remember that infestation. It was wicked.
I don't know. I think they were gypsy moths, or they could be. They definitely made tents. You know, they were definitely tent caterpillars, but there was billions of them. And I heard somebody else come in. But one more thing. Now, the friend I used to talk to on a radio down in Pennsylvania, his name was Chet, K3TV. He had an attack down there of what they call sarcadias, and he was telling me how awful it was. He said, Ray, he said, you just can't understand until you see this with your own eyes. And I said, well, the way it came up was I was talking to him, and I heard this droning noise in the background. It's just like a hum. It sounded like a hum. And I said, what the hell's going on? You got a noisy power supply or something? He goes, no, that's the sarcadias. I said, what do you mean? They're outside. I said, and this was in the summer. I said, are your windows open or closed? He goes, Ray, my windows are closed and the air conditioning in the house is on, and you can still hear them coming through his microphone because it's just a humming sound. And there was so many of them, and he sent me some pictures of them on my computer, because I had a computer at the time. They have these big red eyes and everything. He said it was so bad that any time there was a hill in a road down there, all these cars would be stuck on the hill because there was billions of them crossing the roads, and the cars would try to get up the hill. They'd mash them, and they'd turn into a slime, and they were just like being on ice, and then the cars would just slide off the side of the road. And he showed me a picture of this hill with 40 or 50 cars off the side of the road because they couldn't get traction.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, don't screw with Mother Nature. That's the moral of that story. N1DVL.
Yeah. Anyway, Ray, I'm going to have to step out. I got an early call tomorrow. Enjoyed it, and catch you tomorrow night, KT2D73.
I still want to know if that DU penetrator can take down a flying saucer. That's one thing I'll always keep in the back of my mind. That would prove to me that they really are powerful.
Let me know how it comes out, okay?
What was that?
I said that's an experiment you can run, and just let me know how it works out.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'll just have the white flags ready. We'll have to surrender the whole country.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Go ahead, Bob. You leaving or identifying?
No, I'm leaving. I bid you gentlemen a good night, and I'll talk to you another night. Okay. It's KT2INX. I'm signing off.
Okay, one quick thing if everybody's still listening. I'm going to sign off too, but you know what? I think it's about that time where you should start disconnecting your antenna every night when you leave the radio, because it's right about that time we're going to start getting lightning again. N1DVL 73.
Roger, 73. I hit my off switch, and all the antennas automatically ground. But, no, I know what you mean. I know. It stinks. But at least if it's grounded, there's lightning is out. You're protected by the ground somewhat.
KC3, KXB.